Interesting little Reverend Bart meme from about a year or so ago. You know what? We're going to try this. I want it. Do we have echo in the feed this time before I even get started? Somebody over in the comments tell me if we got echo on the feed. No echo. Outstanding. All right. So shall we roll with it? Cool. The perils of live entertainment. All right, guys. A little Reverend Bart meme from a little over a year ago. They were a lot more thorough about covering their tracks before the grazers got so stupid they'd believe anything the TV told them. I guess we should count ourselves fortunate that now, in this day and age, they can resort to mere character assassination rather than physical assassination. He hasn't seen choreography like that since the Dallas Police Department in November of 1963. Hey, boss, the owner of the local titty bar is here and he's got a handgun. Should we let him in? Turned out pretty bad for that poor Oswald fella, who, of course, acted alone. I digress. P.T. Barnum. Phineas T. Barnum. No man ever went broke overestimating the ignorance of the American public. A guy who should know. A man who made his living being a showman and functioning within the realm of distractions. What better analogy do we have for contemporary culture? Now, of course, the ignorance of the American public, even in this day and age, takes me to points sometimes where I find myself, as jaded as I am, utterly baffled at how we got to this level of stupid. But this week, we were treated to a very special. That's right. This crowd, the oh my goodness, I'm triggered, and the I'm going to wear a pink pussy hat to show how civilized and cultured we are crowd. Yeah. They postulated, and even the second time around with the sound cleared up, I cannot get through this with a straight face. They postulated the assertion that all other things to the side, completely regardless of mitigating circumstances, that across the board, left alone in the woods, a woman was safer with cuddly wuddly Ursus horribilis here than she is with a male human. That's right, boys and girls. A male human poses more of a threat in the woods, left alone with the average woman, than the average bear. No mitigating factors taken into account, no allowance for nuance, no allowance for what type of bear or what type of man. No, we're going to oversimplify for very specific purposes. As I was doing show prep, it came to my attention that there's actually a show out there. Why did they have to name the bear Bart? Why did they have to do that? Why did I get stuck in the middle of this? This was so absurd, it shouldn't have required a second look. But in this day and age, not only did it require a second look, but it went viral, necessitating a week worth of the most shrill histrionics one can imagine. And I actually had to write a Substack about it. That's right, boys and girls. Regardless of any other circumstances, we are to believe that the party on the left is safer than the party on the right for a woman alone in the woods. Patently absurd. One would say prima facie absurd. But as Voltaire reminded us, those who can be made to believe absurdities can be made to commit atrocities. Now, not everybody's built for atrocity. Everybody can be coaxed into it, but not everybody's built for atrocity. But even if we can't be made to commit those atrocities, we can be made to excuse those atrocities or justify those atrocities. We need to look no further than the college campuses in the Ivy League. That's right. The ones who are constantly telling us how much smarter they are than us unwashed, calloused hand deplorables. And out of that demographic, the ones who are the smartest of the smart going to Ivy League universities, coming out protesting in defense of Hamas. They're not defending Hamas. They are taking up for the downtrodden Gazans, the Palestinians in Gaza who are oppressed. The Palestinians in Gaza are certainly oppressed, but do not deceive yourself and be led to believe absurdities. There is a reason why neighboring Arab countries will not accept any refugees from Gaza, and that is because they know the absolute fact of the matter is that there is no distinction between the Palestinians in Gaza and Hamas. Over 70% of Gazans still openly support Hamas in spite of everything that has gone on. And the children there, even those innocent children, I wish we could snatch them out, but we cannot. As soon as they are old enough to understand spoken language, they are being taught hatred for the Jews and, more to the point, hatred for the West and instructed in methods of violence. There is a reason. Do not be misled. Do not be led into believing absurdities. And furthermore, the absurdity that we can take on those refugees that the neighboring Arab nations have refused. Take a good look at these folks, boys and girls. You see the insignia on those headbands? You'll see it on some of the flags that are flying on our universities right now. And this week, the regime said that we're going to be taking them on. I warned you about this months ago. The very first cast that I did when this kicked off back in October, I was on my way back to Texas for that Phillips gig. You guys will remember. And I said, the Arab nations will not take the refugees, but I guarantee you the administration will. Once again, I was right. Once again, I hate the fact that I was right. Side note, I really, really love those Chinese folding stocks like the one guy on the right. Anyhow, that was an AK moment, not a Hamas moment. You knew we weren't getting out of here without an Orwell quote. Doublethink means the power to hold two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them. Currently, we're being told to believe that these people are not going to be a threat, even though neighboring Arab nations won't take them on. We are told to believe that this is a mostly peaceful protest, even though they have broken into campus buildings and committed acts of physical violence against Jewish students. We are being told that this is not racism, that Zionism is racism. Well, the fact is Zionism is racism, but that doesn't make this any less racist. Please witness the one YouTube video from earlier this week where an African-American student among us was prevented from getting to the lecture hall for his final exam. Why? Because he wasn't pro-Palestinian enough. The person stopping him, a spindly little pencil neck white boy. That's right, boys and girls. Two completely opposite thoughts, and holding them both and believing that they're both real at the same time. But I'll go you one better. We have to provide support to these folks, but we also have to love Zionists enough to pass entire laws to defend anyone speaking against them. That's right. This week, a bill passed the House. It's looking to go to the Senate, and you know that this doddering cadaver on the right is going to sign it into law. Why? Because he gives a damn about Israel? No, because his regime gives a damn about control. This bill, read the text of it. It's available online. It is not a crackdown on anti-Semitism. It is a crackdown on free speech. By the letter of this bill, if it becomes law, by the letter of this bill, if it becomes law, boys and girls, me reciting verbatim Revelation chapter 2 verse 9 or Revelation chapter 3 verse 9 or that lovely little bit in the Gospels where the carpenter turns over some tables and says, "You are of your father the devil, and your father's work you shall do." For me to read that in public can get me arrested and incarcerated if this bill becomes law. Am I exaggerating? Go read the bill for yourselves, boys and girls. 9-second Google search. Try not to hurt your clicker thumbs. Bear in mind, folks, we are the last nation. Last nation in the West? No, the last nation. Last industrialization? No, the last nation with freedom of speech enshrined into our founding documents. Do you realize that in Canada, if a creature in a dress with a beard approaches you that identifies as a woman and you call him sir, you can go to jail? Let me say that again. It comes at you wearing a dress, identifying as a woman with a full beard, and you call him sir, you go to jail. The exact same thing that Dr. Jordan Peterson warned about when he refused to accept campus speech codes. And what were we told? Slippery slope fallacy. Slippery slope is never a fallacy when it's got historical precedent. But while we're on the subject of holding opposing thoughts in your head and believing them both, we are being told that hundreds, plural, of billions, plural, of our tax dollars are being sent to defend democracy in Ukraine. For all of my Orthodox brothers and sisters, he is risen. He is risen. Orthodox celebrates Easter a bit different than the Protestant denominations. But back to the topic at hand. We are defending democracy in Ukraine. A Ukrainian democracy that spent this Easter Sunday sending Ukrainian troops into Orthodox churches, arresting priests and bishops and elders and parishioners on Easter Sunday. This from a regime that has already shut down all opposition political parties, seized all media and nationalized it, and just recently suspended elections. And we are being told that our money is being sent there to defend democracy. Maybe, in fact, it's not doublethink. Maybe, in fact, this is exactly the kind of democracy that the regime wishes to defend. That is to say, one where they're in control, you are not, so shut up. The words of one of our founders, Patrick Henry. You will remember him from the quite famous "Give me liberty or give me death," a sentiment which should be proudly entertained by everyone listening to this program. But from the same essay, for my part, whatever anguish of spirit it might cost, I am willing to know the whole truth, to know the worst, and to provide for it. Those of us who do our research, those of us who do think critically, may not know the whole truth, but we know a damn sight better than the rest of us. To know the worst is to take a look at the stupidity of the average American, particularly the average American Ivy League university student. Look at how dumb they are and realize that by definition, if that dumb is the average, at least half of those students are even dumber. So we know the whole truth, we know the worst. And if we really look to provide for it, I think it's a pretty solid game plan to enlighten those who can be reached, to disengage with those who can't, and to get your bodies, minds, and knuckles in solid shape, because we've damn sure got a fight coming up. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own, first time and second time around, and no one else is on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and, now that I've found another one, certainly not employers for all you dox-happy Antifa maggots out there. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They are guaranteed choke you with a throbbing chunk of truth cock. Coming at you live, boys and girls, with a latex glove and a fistful of truth. You're in the right place. Welcome once again to the Sunday Sermon. Please tell me the echo didn't pick back up. Please tell me it didn't. Back to one bar voice. All right, everybody in for the drum roll. Let's see if we can get it right this time. All right, we're going to do the roll call one more time. I apologize for the audio complications. That does happen from time to time. Let me go ahead and fade the music down a little bit while we're doing this. And Ryan, I did see this right off the bat. I just wanted to, hey, stay honest. 1917 is why Hamas and U.S. hatred are here. The Balfour Declaration, be honest, same situation. We would all hate it too. I am going to be 100% honest on that. And when I get into it, we're going to address it point by point the same way I did on October the 7th when this whole thing kicked off, and I was in a little Roach Motel in North Texas getting ready to do that Phillips gig. We're going to get off into that. Come on, Ryan. You know me better than to let that go. All right. Mighty Stone, we're here. Good to see you, brother. Glad you guys made it. Of course, the lovely Miss Charlie on board. Nice to see you, sweetheart. Brother Clem, back stronger and wiser and hopefully less echoey. Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes it just kicks off and does that. It's something in the circuitry, a ghost in the machine, as it were. And of course, Brother Roman, we're back. Take two. Everybody punch up, click like, smash that like button, get us up in the algorithm. Possibly there was a banger of an intro to have it destroyed by the Max Henry Mecco. Yes, no, yes, thank you. All right, Brother Roman on board, the original Cinder Sister herself, the divine Miss Emmy. Brother Ryan on board, somewhere out there in the desert wasteland, making the machinery roll that makes the civilization roll. That's what we're about, and I'm all about it. Roll that footage. Brother Dennis Weimer, OG, Reverend Ranger, and Prophet of Doom. Good to see you on board. Brother Bill Wade, if the paw fits. Brilliant, Bill. Brilliant. Yes, if the paw fits. Riddle me this. You raise these men. Yes. And brother, we're getting it all, man. We're getting it all. We're getting it all, brother. Trust me. Where I failed in that one that I did from Utah, we're going to double down on this one, man. We are going to double down on this one. If I had a bear, I'd name it Bart. Charlie, how do you feel about that? If you had a bear, you named it Bart. Yes. Deacon Mark on the back porch with his lovely wife and hopefully a glass full of inebriant and a nice big cigar. Brother Shin, hello to you, brother. Very good to have you on board, man. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Man, good stuff. Brother Sonny, I'm glad you made it early, man. He is risen, brother. Happy Easter. And there will be a care package en route to you this week, now that you can actually fully appreciate said care package. So, good to have you on board, brother. That crazy Russian! That crazy Russian! That is why I have Canada the way it is. Yes, indeed, indeed. No echo, we're good. Brother Clem, I'm glad you stuck it out. Doug on board. Where'd you? I missed the click. There you are, brother. There you are. Good evening, brother. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Hopefully you're doing okay out there, brother. It's been too long. Gaining my weight back actively. Good. Eat something, man. This happens every year. I remember Fear Inoculum last year, man. You looked like a freaking hostage the first day of that when we got back in. Oh man, what do we got? We got hit hard yesterday. Oh yeah, that bad, huh? Okay, he is risen. Texted my Romanian friends. They have Monday off. Right on. Yeah, Ryan. Actually, I'm kind of interested in that too. Are you guys okay? I don't know what kind of weather you got hit with, but I'm figuring wind and probably some stormage. Probably pretty bad. Anyway, we'll be going into the little road trip that I've got ahead of me coming up this week, and all the things that are going to be going on with that. I'm going to go ahead and fade the bumper music out. I really appreciate you guys' patience, man. I really do. We hate it when those little difficulties come up. I don't, again, this is not a professional. Well, patently obvious it's not a professional production, but it's literally just me. And when I'm on the road, it's just me and a laptop and this webcam. And when I'm here, it's just me and this old Mac Pro Tower. Yeah, the cheese grater looking thing that's like this. Yeah, this old Mac Pro Tower. That's what I'm using when I'm here in town. So when things kick off in the wrong way, I mean, there's no hiding it. You just got to fix it as it goes along. If you miss a cue or you don't have the music queued up right, or if the microphone fails or whatever, there's no, hey man, can we take care of that in post? There's no looking across going, hey, can we put a 7-second delay on that? It's just me, man. That's it. But in a way, I kind of like that. It lends some authenticity to the program. From back in the days, one of the reasons why I still have the camera over here instead of up here in front of me, man, because I want to keep that authenticity, man. We had a really good feel back when we first started this thing, back when it was a COVID cast, and it was just me and a Caterpillar S41 rugged mil-spec phone. And, I would set it over here, and I would set it over here with this thing. I don't know if you guys can, let me see if I can hold this up. This little piggy right here, and I would use this thing to like prop up the phone so we could get the right angle, and it was shot for me. And I don't know, man. I got familiar with speaking to the camera over here, and again, I want to keep it authentic, man. I want when you guys to show up, I want this to be like a conversation. If I ever, if God sees fit to have this thing turn into something larger, where I'm reaching more people and I can do more things with it, then great, and we'll have more graphics and more sounds and stuff like that. But if it's just going to be me, I want it to feel like we're having a conversation, and a little bit of a one-way conversation. But any of you guys that have ever sat down at a table with me know that's normally how it turns out anyway. Uh, except for folks like Sonny and Deacon Mark and Ryan, because Ryan is just as outspoken as I am, and so. But otherwise, yeah, it winds up kind of a one-way conversation. So maybe that is authentic. I don't know. Let me get the sponsor shout outs out of the way. Let me get the sponsor shout outs real quick. Of course, my dear friend Roman and his lovely wife Carrie, and Allie and Roxy and all the beautiful women over at opiumtales.com. They are the erotic pinups and portraits people. Roman is doing some great watercolor work with some very, very beautiful naked women. Check them out on Amazon as well. From Dork to Pimp Daddy, Roman Riva. It's available on Amazon. I think just the Kindle edition, yes. But you can pick that up, and it's basically his journey, man, from being just Joe, working class nobody, to beautiful women paying him for the privilege of painting them naked. That's kind of a flex, man. I like it. But you can check out all the portrait work over there and the testosterone driven commentary. And so we got beautiful naked women and artistic pursuits and testosterone driven commentary on Planet Bart. That is a trifecta. So go check them out. Opiumtales.com and Roman Riva from Dork to Pimp Daddy, available on Amazon. And Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the inland Northwest. Yeah, but what about sit down, shut up, you're wrong? Nordic Smoke, my Viking brothers, Casey and Dusty Tellison, Dusty, the pitmaster over there, they are back out. And if you check them out on social media and you're in the Spokane area, you can find out where they are. Just mentioned something about coming here for a visit at some point in July. I will make sure we get you squared up with some Nordic Smoke while you're here. In fact, anybody who makes it up here is going to be hooked up with some Nordic Smoke. You guys can ask Sonny about his first experience with Nordic Smoke Barbecue. And of course, speaking of books, the other Viking brother, Casey Tellison, has a book out called Freaks of a Feather. He has gotten accolades from everybody up to and including General Mad Dog Mattis over this book. This, he'll tell you point blank, I'm not telling tales out of school here. This is a combat memoir that started out as a suicide note. And it's heavy. It's profound. For every accolade that Sonny gives me about my gift with spoken language, I will go out of my way to say that Casey absolutely has that gift with written language. And that book is going to take you to some places that you would almost rather you not have had to visit. And he walked that for us. So God bless him, and God bless my boys over at Nordic Smoke Barbecue. All right, guys. Appreciate everybody being here. One real quick. I'm stoked about new undertaking we're going to be kicking off here in East Texas. In His Image, like Father, like Son program, we will start for dads and their sons. Faith, discipline, training, skills. Wow. Sonny, if it's not too late when I get wrapped up with this, and if it is, I'll give you a call tomorrow about that, because I'm very interested to hear what you have going on there, man. That sounds pretty heavy and pretty profound. So I would definitely like to get the details on that. Right? Everybody's like, wow, yeah. I mean, that's intense, and we need that. I finally found a home church. Sonny and I had to talk about that. Went to services this morning, and again, still feels like home. Went to men's ministry on Thursday, felt like home. Went to speaking engagement that for a guest speaker that they brought in out in Coeur d'Alene, 15 minutes from here in North Idaho, back on Tuesday. Just surrounded by great people. And for those of you who are of faith, we're out here trying to do some good things. One of the bullet points you will notice that I mentioned baptism. It was not my own, but we're going to be covering that as well. There is something happening in the world right now, man. We are past the tipping point. There is an awakening. There is a revival, for lack of a better word. not even for lack of a better word, I think that's the appropriate word. There is a revival going on in the world right now, man. And I think people ignore that at their own peril. And for I don't mean for people in my circle who are of a secular way of thinking. Those aren't the people, because those guys still have the moral compass. It's the people on the other side who have been winning the culture war handily for decades and for generations, and they're shrugging this off as, oh, look at these ignorant hillbillies thinking they're going to pop back up and take us back to the 1950s. And it's like, dude, that hubris, while it irks me, let's say, that hubris irks me, but I thank God for it, because that means, right? That means that they're ignoring it. The enemy is at the gates. We are their enemy, and we're at the gates, and they're laughing it off. They're laughing it off because of that hubris. They've had it without any pushback for so long that they don't recognize what's going on in the culture. That's why they continue to be so baffled every time something happens in the popular culture that makes perfect sense to everyone who's watching this program, right? It's low-hanging fruit, but I'm going to go there just because it's an easy example. Every indictment they throw at Trump, what happens to his polls? They go up. They can't figure that out. Blacks and Hispanics are breaking away from the Democratic Party and cleaving to the GOP now. And why is this happening? Why is this happening? But they won't act on it. Since 2016, they haven't taken that step back that they needed to take. And I will say this, since I'm on this tear, they could have saved themselves. They literally could have saved themselves. In 2016, after that election, they could have taken a step back and went, okay, this was dumb, right? Again, this is all premised on they actually give a damn about what the American people want. They don't. But premised on, if they did give a damn what the American people really wanted, they should have taken a step back and went, wow, okay, we're completely off the rails here. Who the hell thought we should run that Clinton woman? We are out of touch. We need to sit back and regroup and get a message and stay on message going forward. And then we could take the midterms and hopefully take it back in 2020. Instead, they just went batshit crazy and wound up having to rig 2020 by hook or by crook, but they pulled it off. So again, that contributes to the hubris. They don't see what's going on culturally. They don't see every poll after every poll that shows that this new generation, the one that I personally, and I got to admit, I was wrong. I had no hope for the youngest of the new generation coming up. I thought, man, if the millennials are that far gone, what's going to come after that? It's over. I kind of got blackpilled for a bit. I really did. But they're coming out charging conservative. They're coming out charging in greater and greater numbers going to church. They're coming out charging in rejecting what they see happening around them in real time. They're not taking the bait. They're not believing the narrative anymore. And I can't think of a better word for it than revival. If you don't want to look at it as a religious revival, look at it as a cultural revival. How about that? Lance, glad you made it. Bill said something. Yes, the Great Awakening versus the Great Reset. And those are pretty much all our alternatives at this point. Kirk, internet is stable enough to watch today. Hello, Corn Island in Nicaragua. Guys, Kirk he's a fellow scuba diver, and he is a fellow Washingtonian. He was up here on the left coast with me, and he is now living down in Nicaragua. And apparently loving it, and I'm glad that you got stable enough internet to check it out, brother. It is really good to see you on board. I hope life is treating you well down there. And if they don't take my passport, Kirk, I would love to come down there. I know you got access to dive gear. I would love to come down to Nicaragua and do some diving with you, man. That would really be cool. That would really be cool. Brother Dennis, I never worry that the lunatics will completely win in the end. Human society will always eventually correct itself to survive. It's just a question of how many have to suffer to get there. Dennis, that's right. I keep forgetting. Dennis is also a diver. Yesterday, 8 people in our Jacksonville Orthodox Church and 16 in Tyler. Quite a few young people. It's happening, man. It's happening. And when I get to the baptism in question and offer some speculation on that, you guys will really, really see how it's happening. Before we do that, Dennis kind of inadvertently gave me a pretty good segue about human society always eventually correcting itself to survive, and the important bit, how many will have to suffer to get there. And that is going to take me to... Everybody ready for this one? And again, it's just me here, so I'm having to click on things. That is going to lead me directly into our popular segment, Ryan's Rabbit Hole. You guys tell me if you can hear the crowd cheering. Is it? Yes. Can you hear the crowd? There they are. There they are. Ryan's Rabbit Hole. Let the accolades continue. The thunderous roar of applause. And if for some reason you can't hear it, just act like there are people cheering. I really, really need to build out a professional studio. And by the way, Sonny, I wanted to compliment you on that. I really like the look that you've got, not just the gear and the setup and the quality of everything that's coming out of that studio, but I really like the look of how you've got your spot set up. We've just been doing it here because that's where we do it when I'm in town. But I really kind of want to move. Sonny, you've been here. You know, this is the one side of the wall. On the other side of the wall, we got a room over there, and I'm thinking maybe just completely build that out, just sort of the BART room, you know, the command center or what have you. This week, guys, let me tell you about the rabbit hole for those of you guys who have never seen it. You guys know that Brother Ryan is the guy that opened the door for me on my crane journey, and I can't leave you guys alone, man. I just can't leave you guys alone for like 2 seconds. Okay. Ryan opened the door for this crane journey, which I am right at the 1 year mark, pretty much today, or the 4 year mark, rather. 4 years ago, I was just pulling into Nebraska and getting this whole thing started out there on the wind farm. One of the things that we bonded over is we are both repositories of useless information. We got a brain full of facts and nobody to share them with and nobody to bounce off of but each other. So if you sit and you watch one of these conversations, it's kind of like watching a tennis match embodied in a conversation, and nobody knows what and the only people that know what the other one's talking about usually are me and Ryan. So anyway, every week, and we started doing this early on when it was still the COVID cast, we take you down the rabbit hole. And what the rabbit hole is take you a little bit out of, sometimes it dovetails with what the actual sermon's about, sometimes it doesn't, but we want to take you outside of your comfort zone. We want to introduce you to an historical event, or an esoteric phenomenon, or some weird conspiracy stuff, or an individual who figured heavily in history that you probably haven't heard of. And what is that? 7 more in the queue in Jacksonville. Deacon Mark, that is fantastic news. Fantastic news. In any case, we want to take you outside of your comfort zone and get you thinking about other stuff. And eventually, we hope these rabbit holes lead to other rabbit holes. You're like, wow, that's really cool. Maybe we can find some related stuff, and then just keep it, because you constantly want to be evolving and expanding your mind, expanding your knowledge base. Some of it may not even be applicable to anything in particular, but it keeps the synapses firing. It keeps you active. And this week, your rabbit hole is the wreck of the Batavia. The wreck of the Batavia. And I figure a couple of you here might at least be tangentially familiar with the Batavia and with Beacon Island. This took place in the 1600s. This was the Dutch East India Company, and you guys know that the Dutch East India Company is famous for one thing in particular. Come on, guys! One word starts with an S. I know you guys know the one. By the way, the Battle Bottle from Iron Infidel, always at my side. Dutch East India Company. What are they famous for? Slavery. Right. I mean, like all the college kids knew that. All the Ivy League people that are defending Hamas knew that. But they were, of course, the merchant company, the seafaring merchant company of, when you look at a people like the Dutch, right? And when you look at the Netherlands, when you look at Holland, when you look at that small little landmass, and yet they were able to colonize on the same level as the French or the British, all because of their seafaring trade. And the Batavia was traveling to what is now Australia. Well, I mean, it was Australia then too. We just didn't have any white settlers there. The only things that lived there were Aborigines and every manner of insect and animal and fish that wanted to kill you, and probably some plants that wanted to kill you as well. In any case, the trade route was taking them in that direction. This was like the early 1600s. I want to say 1629 when it happened. Now, I'm not going to lay out the whole thing for you. I'm just going to give you some basic things. There were two people, Gilligan and the skipper. No, wasn't Gilligan and the skipper. But the way that the command structure worked on these Dutch merchant vessels was that you had one commander who basically represented the commercial interest, and the other commander who was in charge of Navy men doing Navy, right? When it's time for the sailor people to do sailor, this guy's in charge. But any merchant affairs were the province of the other commander that they had on board. This wasn't a very large ship. It's like 150 feet, and they had over 300 people on it. The good news is that by the time it was over with, barely 100 made it to the East Indies again on this trade route. They were heading for the East Indies on this trade route. They got mauled up on a coral reef, but before any of this happened, the two commanders were already at odds, because it turns out, in the gangsta colloquialism, them had beef from way back, and they had kind of been at odds. And apparently one of them was, to hear the official account, one was planning a mutiny against the other. Well, they ran up on a coral reef, and they wound up on a couple of islands. One that is now known as Trader Island, and the other was Beacon Island. What followed, and again, I want you to look up the Batavia disaster, Batavia, the Batavia disaster, and Beacon Island. There was no food and there was no potable water on either of those two small islands, right? The commanders were divided in what they thought was the best course of action. One thought we're going to sail to the Australian mainland using the longboat that survived the shipwreck, or using that same longboat to cover 3,000 kilometers. Clem, you tell me how many that is in miles, because we don't use the metric system here. In any case, one of the two commanders decided he was going to take the 3,000 kilometer route, and he left. He leaves the other guy behind. The reason why only about 100 of the people made it back was that the alleged mutineers took control of the survivors that were on the two islands. They had very limited supplies, and one basically unleashed his men against people who represented the other commander who had left. They went onto those islands with the survivors. The larger men cut their the larger men had their throats cut while they slept, because that's the smart way to do it. If you're going to cut the throat of a larger man, wait till he's asleep. But they stole supplies. They raped every woman who was part of that journey, every woman who was part of that journey got savagely raped. And oddly enough, there were no bears on Beacon Island. That was a cheap shot. I should have just, that was low hanging fruit. I should have let that. I'm sorry. I apologize. Mm, that was that was uncalled for. Okay, that was uncalled for. These women were savagely and repeatedly raped, and eventually it got down to butchery. And when you're there and you don't have anything to eat, well, one can make the assumption of how that went as well. So, to what you were saying, Dennis, about they will always make the necessary adjustments to survive, right? That was that was the segue. Let me go back and find the quote. I never worry that the lunatics will completely win in the end. Yes and no. Human society, clearly, by the wreck of the Batavia, will always eventually correct itself to survive. It's just a question of how many have to suffer to get there. So, yes, in that pseudo society that came as a result of this, and that's why I say it's actually an inadvertent, very good segue, that society that was thrown together by virtue of a disaster, like human societies do when they're confronted with disaster and people are acting out of fear and desperation. Not that there are any modern analogs to that I could think of right off the top of my head. They will make the necessary adjustments to survive. And those people did hold out and did survive. I will let you do the dive on what it took to get there and how long they were able to survive and what eventually became of each and every one of them. But, Dennis, you were correct. They correct themselves enough to survive. But to your latter point, it's just a question of how many have to suffer to get there. Yes. How many have to suffer during that correction? And further, once the correction has been made, how many people will continue to have to suffer because of the measures that have been taken for the correction? You guys tracking on that? Like, say, the, Klaus Schwab in the World Economic Forum telling us that we need to embrace the new normal, telling us that there is no going back to normal, that this many people have suffered and now we've made the adjustments and now you are going to continue to suffer because that suffering has become part of the new normal. If you look at the saga of the survivors of the Batavia, again, I want you guys to do the deep dive. I don't want to spoil it. There was a lot of suffering there, and there was even harsher disciplinary action for some of the survivors who were implicated in the mutiny attempt, including some who were tarred and feathered, only it wasn't tar. It was boiled to the same temperature. What would be? Oh, you know what the Talmud says is happening to Christ right now. Yeah, that happened. Yeah, what what the chosen people say is happening to Christ right now. Yeah, they did that to some of these guys. That one I won't apologize for. But the wreck of the Batavia, that is your rabbit hole. The Batavia and Beacon Island. Again, let me spell Batavia for you. Batavia. The Batavia and Beacon Island, spelled exactly like it sounds. Another human tragedy, another horror show, and yes, another example, as Dennis was pointing out, we will always make the necessary corrections for the survival of the people that do survive. It is just a question of how many people are going to have to suffer to get to that status and how many people will continue to suffer over the things that we do once we are there. I want to scroll back to a couple of things here because the next thing that we're going to be going into is the man versus bear thing. Ryan made a couple of very solid points early on before I did the roll call, and I want to make sure that those points get addressed. Um, yeah. Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. Hail Marys, Our Fathers. I actually have a rosary. My history mistress, Shauna, who you've seen on here once or twice, she actually got me a tactical rosary. She's a devout Catholic. She actually got me a tactical rosary, which she sent with a book on Joan of Arc, and I thought that was just magnificent. Shauna, if you're catching the replay, I love you, sweetheart. I miss you a lot. You are one of a kind, and I thank God for you. Couple of the points that got made earlier, and I want to make sure to address this because I did touch on it wasn't the same thing, but it was the same vibe on the imbalance in gender roles, gender responsibilities, and gender accountabilities in this generation. It was the one sermon that I was able to do while I was on that gig in Utah, because all the other Sundays I was working. But this was the one question, and remind me to come back to the other question about the 1790s and the Balfour Declaration in the early 1900s and all the other stuff. But this one in particular, hey Bart, riddle me this: who raised these men whom these women are scared to be in the woods with? And that is one of any number of counters. Guys, I'm going to post my Substack up here, and I want you guys, if you haven't already subscribed, go and check that out. I wrote an entire Substack on this called Of Men and Bears, and I actually had to do a complete rewrite. You guys know I have a little bit of an anger problem, and I've been wrestling with that since my return to the faith, and I actually had to do, this was the longest Substack that I've ever read. It was almost 5,000 words, the longest one I've ever written, rather. Almost 5,000 words, and I had to go back and do a complete rewrite because what they had intended to do, what the people who started off this insane, insipid, ridiculous viral phenomenon intended to do was to incite emotion. And I realized that by letting this thing turn into a hate-fueled rant, that I was essentially making their point. And I went back and I looked at it and I felt convicted in my heart. Carpenter had a little word with me. I felt a hand on my shoulder and a voice just kind of telling me, really? Really? I told you to use the gift. I give you this gift, and this, really? And I looked at it and I read through it, and I was actually viscerally ashamed of it. So I went back and did an almost complete rewrite, which still came off pretty harsh, but it was driven by what I felt was righteous anger or righteous outrage rather than pride-driven rage. I got rid of the first draft. It no longer exists. So for those of you who say, hey man, I want the unedited version. No, it doesn't exist anymore. Ryan postulates something that's a very, very good question. Who raised these? They're so afraid, and this is the disconnect, and the disconnect is really at the heart of it. Even in the Substack, it is the disconnect. They don't even realize what they're saying, and then they're laying it out in such a way that any pushback, and they will say it verbatim. And women, if you're out there going, I don't do that. I, did a full thought, I thought it out completely, and I, okay, great. I'm not talking to you, but you have to take into account that when it broad brushes, you don't get to fall back to, you don't get to tell us when we protest not all men and you come shrieking back at us, that's not, you can't say that. You created this problem. It's all of you. Or, something approximating that. When that is what you have to come back to, you don't get to tell us, don't say that all of you are saying this. We can see the viral output. I understand, ladies, that there are exceptions to this rule. And I understand that there is a rule. You have thinking, sentient women. You have thinking, sentient men, right? On the men's side, then you've got slack-jawed gym bros. And then on the women's side, you have the estrogen-driven blogosphere of planet Dworkin. Rules and exceptions, when I'm looking at this phenomenon, I mean, the fact that I'm even having to discuss this was originally how it was postulated. No subtlety, no mitigating factors, no nothing. You are alone in a vast stretch of woods. Would you rather encounter a bear or a man? Right. And all of you guys are thinking that right now. You're like, well, wait a minute. Where are the woods? First of all, are we talking Montana woods, or are we talking North Carolina woods? Because North Carolina woods is probably going to be a black bear, which can still maul you and do still kill people. But if you're in Montana, it's probably going to be a grizz, and he's just going to chew your face off. And none of this really matters. And while we're at it, I mean, what kind of guy? What kind of guy are we talking about? We're talking about we're talking about an Ivy League, Gaza protester kind of guy. We're talking about some Antifa maggot. We're talking about a big burly gym bro. We're talking about a Methodist minister. Come on, like all of these things are important. None of it. This is all swept away. No other mitigating factors taken into account. No other mitigating factors taken into account. Would you rather be in that stretch of woods with a man or a bear? There's no way out. It's a relatively confined space. Would you rather run up on a man or a bear? I'm just going to drop this and get it out of the way, because the obvious answer is, they say, what are the odds of this happening? What are the odds of that happening? Well, the odds are always 50-50. It either is going to attack you or it is not. I had a woman that I do deeply respect, say, well, if I'm out there in the woods alone, I just want to be left alone. And like a bear would leave you alone. Will it? Will it? And if it decides not to, okay, to further her point, a man won't leave you alone. Well, how do you know? Because if they decide not to leave you alone, right? If a man makes a decision that he's not going to leave you alone, or if he walks up and it's clear that you don't want to be bothered, you can at least vocalize to him and take the chance on, hey, I'm really kind of digging being alone out here. Try that with a bear who's decided to investigate you further. It either is going to harass you, molest you, attack you, or it will not. 50-50. Assuming that is the bottom line of the equation, and it is, again, intellectual gymnastics aside, and we will do the appropriate intellectual gymnastics on all of that in a bit. It either is going to harass or attack, or it's not. If it decides to harass you and it's a man, I would say your odds are going to be much, much better than it's going to be if it's a bear. Even a cuddly-wuddly little black bear. It's about a basic lack of critical thought, a basic lack of risk assessment, and a basic misunderstanding of scale. I'm totally aware of the numbers. We're all painfully aware of the numbers. Okay? But a few things, ladies. This generation of men, all the ones who you lament, were raised by women. There's problem number one with this shrieking self-righteousness. This entire generation of men that you lament was raised by women. The thing that I kept hearing is, you men made this problem. You men made this problem. No, we did not create the problem. What created the problem was a lack of masculinity, not an overabundance of it. Legitimate men, real men, raised by good fathers, and they are the rule, not the exception, for all your shrill, emotion-driven, factless, baseless histrionics. Once upon a time, good men, fathers in the household. That was the rule, not the exception. These same women that would choose the bear, how do they vote? What policies do they advocate? How many of these women who would choose the bear are the same ones that every time Father's Day come around feel morally obligated to get on and do some shrieking post about, I have been his mother and his father. No one, we don't need fathers. How many? That's the first of any number of just absurdities about this entire freaking thing. But I'm going to give you a little excerpt. Because at the end of the day, what they are asserting, and men, here's where I blame you. And I didn't cover this enough when I first addressed this issue from Utah. This kind of idiocy, this kind of badgering is the same third-gen feminism that drives, we're setting the bar high, we got standards of value, you will bow down, all of this. It's all enabled by you. You hear me, men? Men. Real ones you can tune out right now. Ones that do take a leadership role in your home, you can go ahead and tune out right now. Because this isn't for you. We've all got that ex. And sometimes it is the same one. Not in this case, but for all of you guys that do hold it together, for all you guys that do put in 40 or more hours a week and hold together your household and are a mentor to children that aren't even yours and are a solid father to the children that are, you can go ahead and tune out right now. You can tune out just for a minute. You can tune out. This isn't about you. I'm talking about weak, I'm going to use a couple of my college words here, invertebrate castrati, spineless eunuchs. You allow them to spew nonsense and act in ways that are inexcusable because the alternative is you might not get laid. You did this. You created this. Women. Yes, simps. You simps. That desperate for a woman's attention. Any woman. Guys, I'm trying to get the language under control, but I'm going to say it too for you pretty motherfuckers that are wrecking shop. You bear some responsibility in this too, because you are the ones that have created it. You lead women on. You play with their hearts. You dip, duck, and dive. What's the other word? Fuck boys, spelled B-O-I, fuck boys, right? You dip, duck, and dive. Leave everybody else holding the bag. And I really despise you for doing that because you do make it hard for everybody else. But ladies, you don't get left off the hook here because you continue to choose those men. And your lack of risk assessment is evident across the board, from your choice in so-called men all the way up through choosing the bear. The same mentality that you use to justify choosing the bear, you created. And for the women out there that don't meet that criteria, I'm not talking to you. You can tune out with the good guys and the good father. You can tune out too. I'm addressing the guilty parties. And if this is sticking in your craw, whether under your nutsack or up in your quim, you're part of the problem. If you remotely are bothered by the things that I'm saying, that's guilt. Bart, that's unfair. You can't say that. Really? In the same way that you can't say that everyone who pushed back against that just outed themselves as a predator, because that was the viral push. I'm so glad these men are getting angry. It makes it easier to spot the predators. Really? That's an interesting take. That's a really interesting take. Easy to spot the predators. Or maybe, oops, you might want to turn the volume down, Garrett. You might want to turn the volume down. Or maybe the ones who are getting outraged about this are the ones who aren't the predators. Because I got news for you, ladies. The predators aren't deterred by rhetoric. The predators aren't deterred by getting outed. They're going to continue to do exactly what they've always done. And they're going to laugh in your face, because the predators are the same pretty mother that you voluntarily chose in the first place. Here's another problem with the equation. Do you choose a man or do you choose a bear? And this was an excuse. Okay, good. All right. The same pretty motherfuckers that you chose, they're going to continue to do what they've always done. This was another thing that got thrown at me by this woman who I do respect and who did think it through. She posted from an article that said, well, a lot of women get victimized by men, and we have to assume that it makes sense to choose the bear, because where a man is concerned, we always have to choose worst case scenario. We have to treat all men as worst case scenario coming right out of the starting gate. And you know what? If you actually live that, I would gladly concede that point. As a man who has spent time teaching women risk assessment skills where men are concerned, who has studied and gotten into the mind of these predators that you fear so much, if you literally live that, I would be forced to concede the point. I would be forced to concede the point. Here's the thing. You don't live that. We have to assume that all men are going to be worst case scenario. When the leaves rustle and it's not a bear that steps out, when it's a man that steps out, we have to assume that it's worst case scenario. Unless he's a good looking man. Tell me I'm wrong. Bundy, party of 37, your table is ready. You don't hold that. You are the same sisterhood of woman that made 50 Shades of Grey a bestseller, knowing full well that if 50 Shades of Grey had been written about a man living in a single wide trailer, doing that to his secretary at the used car lot that he owns, it'd be an episode of CSI. We have to treat every man like he's worst case scenario, unless he's a good looking man. And then those threat assessment skills go right out the window. Unless he's soft spoken, unless he's smaller and weaker than you are, then you don't treat it like that. Well, okay, but these are nuances, right? So you're admitting that nuances and mitigating factors are a thing now. How kind. If the man who steps out of the wood, right, thank you. Yeah, but that doesn't become evident right off the bat. I mean, poor guys can steal an Armani. But yeah, I hear you though. I hear you, Stone. I totally hear you. I do. If the man that emerges from the forest is black, ooh, where's he going with this? You know where I'm going with this. If the man that emerges from the forest is black, you will not treat him like worst case scenario, or at least you will not make it obvious that you are treating him like worst case scenario because you don't want him to think you're a racist. So no, you do not hold that standard across the board. If he's good looking, you drop your guard entirely. If he's black or Latino or whatever, you don't want him to think you're racist. And since we are talking about white liberal women who are driving this, let's not mince words. You might not drop your guard, but you don't exercise full discretion because you don't want him to think you're racist. And I'll go you one better, and this is going to hurt, particularly for the white liberal women. If that man is wearing a dress, oh yeah, you knew. You knew I was taking it there. I choose the bear. I mean, men can't be trusted because they're dangling an appendage, except for trans women, because trans women are women. Ladies, do you have to assess all males, biological males, or we drawing distinctions now? That once a man identifies as a woman, he becomes part of the divine sisterhood, and that appendage he's got there is no longer a threat to your daughters. But I think my favorite to come out of all of this has got to be, well, at least I know if a bear kills me, he's not going to rape me first. You're probably right. I can't think of a single instance in recorded history where Ursus horribilis has mounted a female. Dude, I hope you're trolling, but if that's true, Ryan, please, for the love of God, send me a link. Please, for the love of God, send me a link, because that's too funny. I can't even. Where the hell was I? At least he's not going to rape me. No, I can't think of a single recorded incident in history where Ursus horribilis mounted a human female because she was in season or what the hell ever. And I can't find a single. I can't find. Thank you. Still, it would have been great, wouldn't it? It would have been great. It would have been great. New business. Cuddle the Grizz Park in Montana. Tickets refundable if they come back after a month. Sonny, I'm going to get busy on that. Let me get this point out before I completely lose my train of thought. No, ladies, Bear's probably not going to rape you before he kills you. You know what he is going to do, though? Know what he is going to do? He's going to take those massive jaws. He's going to wrap them through the front part of your abdominal cavity, the part on this side, just below your rib cage. Not that he can't smash your rib cage with those jaws, but he's going to try to get down lower so he doesn't meet as much resistance. He's going to chomp and tear into that abdominal cavity, grabbing intestines and spleen, kidneys, anything that might be close enough, because those jaws are pretty huge. And he's going to drag it out of your abdomen in front of you while you scream. So while it may be cute in front of your shrill feminist sewing circle to say, well, at least the bear is not going to rape me, in your last 30 to 40 seconds of life, you're going to wish you'd chosen the man, even if he had. And I don't say that lightly, because again, I've spent decades teaching women how to make themselves harder targets. But here's the thing. What about the women you've taught? You don't think they're going to see this video? No, absolutely not. Why? Because I've taught them realistic threat assessment. And they've at least got the discernment to realize, Sonny, I can't even post that. Everybody in the chat can see it, but I can't even post that because I'm already having to go to confession. Yeah, they were going to wish. They were going to wish. Hey, bon appetit. Clem, that was perfect. It's beautiful. Listen, guys, I'm only making light of it because, yeah, I'm a little irritated. But the whole thing about it going viral is, yeah, look at all the men. They're big mad. It's like, we're not mad. We're irritated. We're frustrated. And we think you're utterly ridiculous. We're not trying to shout you down so much as laugh you out. You don't understand scale. Well, only 6 women were killed by bears in the calendar year. Okay, great. But how many encounters were there between women and bears in that same time period? How many? How many bears are there in the woods of North America? I touched on this briefly in the Substack. And again, you should check it out. Let me go click on that again. Again, go check it out. How many bears are there in North America? How many encounters between women and bears happen every day? You don't understand scale. Yes, there were X amount of violent crimes being committed by men against women, and that is a horrible thing, and we do everything in the world to prevent that. How many tens, plural, of millions, plural, of interactions are there between women and men on a daily basis in the United States of America that don't end in anything horrible? Tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions. Tens or hundreds of millions of interactions between men and women every single day that don't end in something horrible. Maybe you should try to develop a fundamental understanding of scale, ladies. Bear attack, women, right? And I'm going to throw this out for you too. What you are suggesting and then wondering why we're pushing past. When you read the Substack, you'll see it. I'm going to give you 2 paragraphs, and I hope you'll be patient with me. And you men that sat there in silence, some of you who I know to be good and righteous men, who are doting husbands, exemplary fathers, hard workers, men who have and do put themselves in harm's way to protect the women that they love. Men who have supported me in training women to protect themselves from evil men, who have laid hands on the very evil men that I discuss. And you sat there, cowed into silence by some howling Jezebel, literally calling you a latent rapist in front of your wife and spitting in your collective face. The very prospect of having a conversation, a real conversation, one with 2 parties involved in a field already strewn with emotional landmines by a howling malcontent that you've never met, telling the woman that you sit next to in church that she's literally better off meeting a grizzly bear in the woods because you and your sons can't be trusted not to stove in her head with a brick and gang rape her. Am I being hyperbolic? Because the one that was making the rounds, the ones that I quoted for that Substack piece, laid out every single one of those factors verbatim. For the reasons why they chose a bear. A bear isn't going to get his friends to maul you too. A bear isn't going to hit you in the head with a brick because you won't give him his phone number. I don't mind people acknowledging that there are situations. I don't mind people acknowledging the gravity of it. But when you double down on this, and when we merely point out facts, most men are not like this. In the Substack, I also point out that it's about 4% of men that commit 63% of all of these acts of sexual violence, let alone, ladies, if we really want to do a demographic deep dive on who's more likely to rape you, Oh, he's dancing on the edge. Is he going to go there? Yes, I'm absolutely going to go there. 13 to 50. And yet, and this is where it gets back, and I'm going to close with this because I just don't want to give this any more dignity. Here's where it gets back to that faulty risk assessment. The very factors that pose the biggest risk are the ones that you specifically ignore as risk factors. The Ted Bundys of the world rack up body counts like that because they're the proverbial pretty motherfucker. Oh, he's not a threat. It's that creepy guy. It's that bald guy with the missing teeth. Worry about him. Good looking dude in the suit. He drove up in a nice car. He's not a problem. You have to threaten that. In fact, I'm specifically going to ignore the fact that this person is statistically more likely to rape me by a factor of 11 because I don't want that person to think I'm racist. And I'm not just quoting statistics. There are two examples that I bring up in every single class that I teach. Would you rather be dead or racist? I bring these, and I've had women walk out of my classes because of it. But it's ODP. Yeah, you know me. You down with ODP? Objectively, demonstrably, provably. ODP. Factual. Calendar year, what was it, 2005? Now, this I'm paraphrasing. You can fact check me on it, but because I am quoting from memory. I want to say calendar year 2005. Over 14,000 white women raped by black men. Number of black women raped by white men in that same period of time, less than 10. FBI Uniform Crime Report, go look it up. But that is an indictment because that isn't an indictment specifically because in that same calendar year, nearly twice that many women were raped by white men. Okay? 13% of the population versus 64% of the population. Do you understand how I'm coming to the conclusion by a factor of 11? Regardless, is it worst case scenario for every man or is it not? The premise is if it has a penis, it is an innate threat, therefore I choose the bear. That's the premise. Independent of how we want to dance it off. No, you men just don't understand. No. Bottom line, the premise is if it packs a penis, we have to consider it a threat across the board, and I choose the bear instead. Okay. Then that means you should be treating it the same, even if it's a good-looking guy. That means you should be treating it the same, even if it's a black man. That means that you should be treating it the same. Oh wait, because this person that I respected, that I had the conversation with, they said, yeah, but one man said, and he responded the same way because they asked which one he'd rather have his daughter with. He'd rather have his daughter with a bear than a man. First of all, that man needs to be punched in the mouth. That man is a complete emotion-driven idiot with no concept of threat assessment or scale. F that dude, unequivocally. I would rather my daughter be with a man. All other things being equal. Again, across the board, no mitigating factors, no ifs, ands, or buts, blah, blah, blah. My daughter's alone in the woods. I would rather her be with a man. A thinking, sentient creature. Because guess what? Bears aren't the only thing in the woods that'll kill you. Men aren't the only thing in the woods that'll kill you. But men are the only thing in those woods that'll protect your ass from all the other things trying to kill you. Again, no concept of scale, ladies. Emotion versus reality. It's beautiful, isn't it? But if we're gonna throw that daughter up in my face, like that's supposed to make me rethink it, it doesn't, first off. But if that's gonna be your premise, that my daughter would be safer in the woods with a bear than a man, then don't you dare get upset When I see a man with facial hair wearing a dress walking into a women's restroom or women's dressing room that I know my daughter's in, and me snatching him by that long hair, and once I figure out it's a wig, snatching him by that beard and lighting his ass up, I don't want to hear it. We are either consistent or we are not. I will, brother. I will. I'll give you a buzz. Right. Right. Yep. I see what you're saying. What is a woman doing alone in the woods in the first place? Now you're blaming the victim. Oh, God. We're not big mad. I'm not big mad. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because I get frustrated at stupidity. I get frustrated, and when logic leaves the room, I tend to go and follow it. Try to as best I can. But I think the thing that frustrates me the most out of all of this, honestly, is the fact that it had the exact results that was intended. To make women completely act on emotion. And to make a lot of men act completely on emotion. Drive a further wedge in between and lose complete track of the salient point. But I'm going to give you this from the same article. You're right, ladies. No bear has ever insert litany of horrible things to you. You know what else no bear has ever done? Taught you how to defend yourself from bigger bears. For starters, no bear has ever comforted you in a time of crisis, especially crisis created by lesser men. No bear has ever chosen you above all other women, forsaking all others with whom to build a home, build a life, and raise a family. No bear has ever worked his ass off, wrecking his physical, emotional, and psychological health to provide a better life for you and the children you bore him, and more often, children that you bore for someone else. Lost life and limb in a war to protect the civilization that provides you the comfortable life that you and those children revel in. Risked life and limb in every filthy and dangerous occupation in that civilization, from power lines to coal mines to offshore rigs to sewers, and came home with no more hope in his heart but to hear the approval of you and those children. Stood in the gap to protect you and your children against the ravages of an increasingly hostile, violent, and uncertain world, recognizing the evil in lesser men, addressing that evil, keeping you from it, and teaching your sons, whether they were ones you bore for him or for one of those lesser men, to not grow up to be like the monsters. There's more. I'm going to leave it there. But if we're going to rant and rave about all of the things that no bear would ever do to you, you might want to think about those. That was pretty that was pretty good too. Changed your tire, saved you when you were drowning, right? I can think of 100 things. There, right, Garrett. And that's what I came back to when I did the rewrite. And I really hate that I even went off on any of the frustration factor here. But this is how they came at us, man. This is how they came at us. And I, for one, am tired. I'm tired of women making bad decisions. And then when they are inevitably hurt by them, they take it out on people like myself or people like the good men here who tried to talk them out of that bad decision in the first place. All men! No, not even close. And if it's all men that you pick, the problem is you. But you know what? I'm not letting the guys off the hook here either. Because guys, we let them. We let them. Simps out there, let it happen. Like we're supposed to chase them like they're any great freaking prize. A good woman is a prize. You'll hear that in the scriptures. You'll read that in the scriptures. A good woman More precious than a precious gem, dude. How many of them are out there? How many of them do good men try to talk down from really, really aberrant behavior that is ultimately going to get them hurt? But they know better. They're going to chase the pretty motherfuckers. And I'm sorry for the repeated use of the F-bombs here. I've been trying to get that under control. But, right, Roman, absolutely. Someone like Carrie is a prize. Charlie is a prize. Mark, Ida is a prize. Sonny, Megan is a prize. Anybody that I missed, Garrett, your wife, a prize. We hold them up on a pedestal. But I promise you, maybe not for everybody that I mentioned here, Alexi, your wife. There are men out here who constantly try to improve themselves. Constantly try to improve themselves. Not for selfish reasons. Not to cop a piece of ass like the pretty motherfuckers y'all keep chasing, but to be ready for a fight, to be ready to work, to be ready to build a home, to be ready to give themselves over completely to someone who will give themselves completely right back. We work for that every day. And we watch the same women. And you know, those women aren't the ones griping. Those women aren't the ones suggesting something as absurd as I choose the bear. Some of those women are previous victims of the same violence, and they still don't choose the bear because they understand scale, they understand risk assessment, and they understand, ladies, whether you like it or not, you need us. Oh, they're shrieking now, the ones with the pink pussy hats. They're shrieking, y'all need us. In the same way that we need you. Yes, we recognize, believe me, because just like the good women who have had to suffer the results of their own bad decisions, there are men out here, myself included, I know Ryan included, several other people, who have made bad decisions and lost everything as a result of it. And you know what? When we walk into the forest, we'd still rather run into a chick than a bear. Real men are not going to sit around anymore. Real men, again, if you're a simp, you're already shrugging this off because you know you're going to continue to act the same way, and you know the women are going to let you. Because they got that charming little smile, six-pack washboard abs they can scrub their panties clean on. You're going to dip into their life. You're going to create the wreckage. You're going to take off. And we're the ones that are going to be made to pay for it. They got plenty of women out there who, you know, think that OnlyFans is empowering. Right? I'm an independent woman. I sell pictures of my butthole online and I make a lot of money. That's the culture. But when you find yourself alone at 30 plus and nobody wants no reasonable man wants anything to do with you, we didn't do that. You did. When you think it's perfectly okay to run up a body count in the double digits, high double digits, and then when you're 30 and ready to settle down with those raw and flapping steakums, whatever's left of them, and you can't find a man, we didn't do that. You did. When you're screaming about where are all the good men with no hoes, I'll tell you where we are. We're right back in the friend zone where you left us. But you know what? We're not there anymore. Because just like some men are going to be the rule and some men are going to be the exception, some women are going to be the exception. And we held out, and a lot of us found them. We set the bar high not because we felt like we were entitled. We set the bar high because we knew what we had worked for. Not because we were pretty. Men don't have that luxury. Men don't have the luxury of being, well, I'm bringing sex to the table. What are you bringing? We don't get to do that. That's a woman thing. Men allow you to behave in this aberrant fashion. Those simp men are laying the groundwork for this. And if you continue to play into this, that all men are bad, all men are horrible, I choose the bear, you also choose the single life, and you have no one to blame but yourself. And men, I encourage you, if there are women in your life that thumped their chest and made a big deal about choosing the bear, you need to extricate them from your life. You need to make one and only one attempt to school them on natures of scale and risk assessment, and then you need to leave. Make one attempt. Listen, I saw the thing, and do what a real man would do about it. Listen, I heard you spewing. I understand you're angry, but let me break this down for you. This is why this, and this is the rationale behind this, and this is why what you're saying is illogical, and this is why I feel like you really should rethink this. One attempt. They don't respond, they're gone. Gone. On any level. Friend, family member, God help you, girlfriend. Get them out. We don't need it anymore, because real men and solid women need each other now for the sake of the survival of the West more than we ever have. I don't have room for pretty motherfuckers doing their dip and dive and creating all the emotional trauma. And I don't need, no, I'll say it, I don't need stupid women with no accountability who are going to make these horrible decisions. I see you. Who are going to make these horrible decisions. And then hold us to account. No more. Cut it loose and walk. For you guys that are simps, you're going to do whatever. There's no reaching you any more than they're reaching the choose the bear crowd. But for you men who are on the fence, who are like, dude, you're really scared of being alone. Maybe you're like me. Kind of fat, kind of toothless, kind of crippled, holding out. Really don't think your prospects are that good with women. I'm going to offer you what has kept me straight in between relationships. And that's that this right here was the only sex partner that I had for the first 17 years of my life. One more day is not going to kill me. Think it over. That, and at the end of the day, nobody does me like I do me. That's right. I know where all the buttons are. I know how to push them. Nobody does me like I do me. I even call out my own name when I come. Live with that visual. Sleep well. Guys, it doesn't have to be this way. It shouldn't be this way. And if we are going to survive, not only as a gender, but as a civilization and indeed a species, it can't be this way anymore. You want to see how absurd it got? I'm going to show the Glamour magazine. Just do a Google search. Choose the bear. Glamour magazine, double down. And if we don't agree, then we are, and I quote, denying their lived experience. No. We're choosing facts over emotion. The Sacramento Bee, women, would you rather be alone with a bear or a man in the woods? It comes down to the same thing. If we don't shut up, bow and apologize and genuflect, we are denying their lived experience and we are outing ourselves as predators. That's literally what they're saying. If we allow them to say that with no pushback, we deserve everything that we get. And if you go one further And there may or may not be some people out there that read that Substack that are wondering if I lost some respect for him over this. If you got to wonder, the answer is yes. There are a couple of people close to me that went one step further and did the bow down and genuflect. Men really need to... Dude, if you so much as gave that a like on somebody's thread, I lost a little bit of respect for you. If you went further and laid fingers to keys and typed anything to support this nonsense, I've lost all respect for you. Probably better off just outing yourself and walking on out the door. Say goodbye on your way out if you got the guts. Read that Substack. That'll tell you everything that I have to say about it. That'll be that. Oh, goodness gracious, man. I had 3 or 4 bullet points picked out, but I ranted too long about this, and I just don't want to. I don't want to deal with it anymore. Again, the trans men in the women's bathroom, the trans women in women's bathroom thing. Again, it's either a threat or it isn't. You don't get to pick and choose. Well, it's a worst case scenario threat, but not if it's a black guy. Oh, it's a worst case scenario threat, but not if it's a good looking guy. Oh, it's a worst case scenario threat, but not if it's transsexual. No, dude. The premise is if it packs a penis, it's a threat. You deal with it. All right, let's get on with the rest of this stuff, man. The campus protest, right? And this will refer me back. Let me go back to the other point that Ryan brought up early about 7. Where was it? Doggone it. Nobody comment right now. I'm trying to scroll back and find it. Let me see. Riddle me this. Okay, there was the first point. Let's try. Hey, stay honest. Okay, all right, cool. That's going to be our starting point. Let me scroll back down here. (1917) is not the only reason why the hatred of Jews and hatred of the West is here, okay? That historical animosity has cut both ways for a very, very long time. Their hatred of America, okay, is rooted in things that happened in 1917 and things that happened further in the 1940s, okay? That is their hatred of America. And those things, okay, those things are what everything hinges upon with regard to this entire situation, whether we are talking about the Balfour Declaration or whether we are talking about 1948 and pushing the so-called Palestinians off of their land and everything else. And I'm not even going to do the historical hat dance that is going to be required to go into who was the previous occupier of that land. Why? Because it's going to make me intellectually dishonest. How am I going to hate on Israel going in and sweeping through and conquering land that was owned by somebody else and not hate on white Europeans for doing the same thing? It is the law of conquest. Granted, there are mitigating factors because white Europeans were just white Europeans and we were using our own technology and the products of our own development to conquer those people rather than what Israel was ultimately, what would become the nation of Israel, what those Zionists were doing to the people that lived there, and they had the full faith and backing of the West. But let's not kid ourselves. How it began, we can have that debate all day long. I have said, and I stand by, Ryan, and I hope that you're still here and I hope that you're paying attention. I have said, and I stand by the fact that Israel, the secular, Christ-denying nation of Israel, is doing horrible things to the Palestinians. They have been. Genocide, I think by any reasonable definition, yes. Particularly now. and they are putting on the final push. However, the enemy of my enemy is not my friend. I support neither party in this. I support neither party in this. And as I get into the following bullet points, you will see why I support neither party in this. Hamas, regardless of when they started to hate us, hate us. Regardless of who backed the fledgling Jewish ethno-state of Israel, regardless of who backed them and how and what kicked off this whole thing. Yes, these were horrible moves that I wish historically that we could undo. In the same way that I wish we could go back to 1953 and unass ourselves from the coup against Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran, because Iran is now supporting Hamas and Hezbollah. Israel sees us as a paycheck and a client state. Again, not God's people, Israel. We can look at now, and I'm going to be pegged as anti-Semitic, and when that law gets signed in, and you know it's going to get signed in, I'm actually going to be able, you can go back and look at this video, and you can put me in jail. But this is a hill that I'm willing to die on. The latest studies show that a very, very tiny minority of the inhabitants of Israel have any Hebrew DNA. Their ancestry goes to other places. They are not natives of that land in the first place. Sorry, but there it is. And let's not overlook that the Talmud, for all of you Southern evangelicals, that with your servility to this Christ-denying nation, the Talmud says that your Savior, my Savior, is boiling alive in excrement for all eternity. That's their holy book. And yet you throw yourselves behind them because the Bible said so. Go back and reread your Bible, Sparky. You are of your father the devil, and your father's work you will do. Revelation 2:9 and Revelation 3:9, twice in the book of Revelation, several times in the letters of Paul. Are we talking about the Jewish people? Are we talking about just regular rank and file Jews here in the United States? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the religious scholars, the political leaders. Back then it was the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now it's the Knesset. But now the Southern evangelicals are finally having to take another look, because there is a bill that's about to pass that is going to outlaw you reading any of those Bible verses in public. Am I being hyperbolic? Not in the least. Go read the bill. Anything that said that the Jews killed Jesus, going to be against the law. The Passion of the Christ, that film, going to be against the law. The enemy of my enemy is not my friend. I have no dog in this fight, and believe me, they are both dogs. I say that without a shred of hyperbole, without a shred of equivocation or regret. They want to play my God can beat up your God, let them play it. Not with my money, Sparky. Not with my money. We owe them nothing. Nothing. As Americans, as denizens of the West, and as Christians, we owe them nothing. Nothing. They are not our ally. You could have made a case for them being our ally up until the point where they started manipulating our foreign policy to serve their ends. You could have made a case for them being our ally up until the point where they started undermining the very values that are the foundation of the West, to wit, freedom of speech and expression. I don't care what it is. If you oppose free speech and free expression, you are my enemy. I stand behind even these maggots and these maggots in their right to speak. They didn't run afoul of me until they started physically putting hands to people, until they started deliberately impeding progress, until they started blocking highways, which is the other one that I was going to get into. What is it? Chaos on the campus and courts coddling maggots and inbound Gaza refugees. Again, the enemy of my enemy is not my friend. Was West hostility to be upset over being usurped is ridiculous? Okay, I get that. But where I'm at with it is, they, as far as I am concerned, Ryan, and I think I've been abundantly clear on this, even on October 7th, they are both enemies of the West, just in different ways. I shed no tears. When people reap what they've sown. I understand that war is war. While I will not cheer for the atrocities, what happened on October the 7th, people being raped to death with bayonets, people being set on fire alive. And by the way, that is not exaggeration. All right? There are any number of internet resources. I'll get banned for YouTube for sending you there, so I'm not going to post them. There are any number of internet resources where you can go and you can watch some of the video from October the 7th. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, while they're setting people on fire. Okay? It's horrible. You know what else is horrible? White phosphorus on a hospital. White phosphorus on a hospital is pretty horrible. If you've ever seen what white phosphorus does to a human body. And that's been Israel's go-to, even though it's banned by the Geneva Convention, even though we had to give up using it. White phosphorus on hospitals. And then there's the flip side to that. Why are they dropping white phosphorus on hospitals? Well, as often as not, or white phosphorus on schools. You have people on the Gaza side that launch their missiles from inside a hospital complex or a school complex. They've been caught doing it time and time again. It's a human shield thing. It's a tactic. It's something they're known for in the entire region. It's something that even makes al-Nusra uncomfortable, but they do it. And they get hit with white phosphorus. It's war. It's genocide. It's only a one-sided, and Sonny, you already know I'm going there. That genocide is only one-sided because one side has the stroke and one side is backed by other parties. But guess what? We're inadvertently arming the other side too, just not as well. Every bit of humanitarian aid that we send to Gaza winds up going to the Iranians and being used for weapons. Hamas and Hezbollah are known for this. The only reason that genocide is one-sided is because Israel's got the stroke. If Hamas had the stroke, if Hezbollah had the stroke, if they had access to nuclear weapons, that genocide would not only be two-sided, but it would be over with very quickly on the one side. Because you got to think, Israel is a strip of land roughly the size of New Jersey. You really think that if Hamas and Hezbollah and all of the other Arab nations had access to nuclear weapons, that Israel wouldn't be wiped off the map? How much of Israel would be wiped off the map? Oh, I'm thinking an area from the river to the sea. Oh, wait, where have I heard that? From the river to the sea, where have I heard that? Oh, yeah, college campuses. And you know what? I'm still down with their right to speak. They didn't run afoul of me until they started physically putting hands to people. I'm so sick of hiding behind nonviolent protests. But that's what we hid behind again. Because that judge... A judge, by the way, who had previously tweeted in support of Palestine. You guys can Google her. Her name is Andrea Jarman, Jarmon. she dismissed charges against pro-Hamas protesters who not only blocked I-5 up here in Seattle, and those protests went on all over the country. She dismissed all of the charges against them. These people had physically battered vehicles. These people had broken out windshields of people that tried to get around them. So now we have no recourse in the courts. So now we have pro-Hamas protesters who can do whatever the hell they want, and law-abiding American citizens will be punished for taking any action against them. Now we have a genocidal, and let me say it again, secular, Christ-denying nation of Israel who has used their lobbying power to influence our foreign policy, making it worse in the region, and now wants to turn around and say that if we point that out or quote a Bible verse, we're in violation of the law. We're getting it from both sides because we tried to play both sides. We have sown the wind and we will reap the whirlwind. And what are we doing? What is the regime doing? The open borders that have already let all of these illegals across that are on the terror watch list. Now we're just going to straight up open the door to refugees from Gaza. That was on CBS this week. You want to talk about a failure of risk assessment? Let's talk about that. Ladies, I'm almost more sympathetic to you and the bear than for us to think that we can allow refugees, quote unquote, in from Gaza and not reap the whirlwind when they're already infiltrating, when they're already Iranian sleeper cells here. And guys, I'm going to point this out. The judge who liked the Free Palestine clause, she turned those protesters loose that blocked the bridge. Do you think, and these are the same sets of prosecutors, the same sets of judges, that when we had the nonviolent fentanyl Floyd riots and they burned down cities for 3 months, turned them loose without charges? You understand that there is no recourse left in the court system. That if we don't nail down this election, we're going to have no choice but the cartridge box. I don't say that with any relish, boys and girls. I'm old. I'm nursing injuries. I would prefer to get out of that without a fight, but I will not shirk from the fight that I know is coming. But here's the kicker. So we've let them in through the southern border. We're going to be taking them in from Gaza. We have Ivy League white liberal college students who are protesting in their defense. And we're going to wonder why when the next attack happens that makes 9/11 look like the dress rehearsal it is. You guys familiar with the Sean Ryan show? You guys familiar with Sean Ryan? You guys, I'm going to spell his name out. SHAWN, Ryan as Ryan. Sean Ryan show. If you are not following Sean Ryan, you should be. But here's the one thing that I want you, if you have any doubts about the regime and their intentions with this, the Sean Ryan show, it's available on Apple Podcasts, probably also available on Spotify. I get my stuff from Apple, I don't know. Episode number 107. Former Army intel guy is interviewed, and he talks about what happened in Afghanistan, what is still happening in Afghanistan, and why it's happening. Folks, we're already at war. We've already been at war. We have fifth columnists on the campuses of Ivy League universities. Useful idiots, as they were once upon a time called by a certain gentleman named Yuri Bezmenov. That's another name you should get familiar with. Look back at what Yuri Bezmenov tried to tell us in the 1980s, and we called him a John Bircher and a conspiracy theorist. We're at war, people. And I'd like to laugh. I do laugh a lot. Every time the things that someone has created are visited upon them, I do laugh a lot. I shouldn't take solace in that. Schadenfreude is not something that we should really give. As Christians, Schadenfreude is something that we shouldn't give into as much as I'm guilty of giving into it. Sean Ryan show, bookmark that, episode 107. He talks about what went on in Afghanistan during our withdrawal, how members of the regime are still in touch with the leadership of Afghanistan, how we were still using the Taliban as an intelligence resource. While our southern border is open, we have literally over 100 now on the known terror watch list that have come across the southern border. Nothing is being done to secure it. And now we're going to throw the door wide open to refugees from Gaza. If you had any doubts about where the regime was for this and what is at stake in November, put it out of your head. But let me take it back to Ukraine. Speaking of genocides that we're supporting, and Sonny, you were right to bring that up. When they are talking about defending democracy, this is exactly what they are talking about. This is exactly the sort of democracy that they are talking about defending. Do you realize that here we are on Easter Sunday for the Orthodox Church, and they are going in and they are arresting parishioners, arresting worshipers, beating up and arresting Orthodox priests in Ukraine right now. That same Ukraine that we have sent approximately $200 billion to, your tax dollars, by the way, to defend democracy. That's what they keep telling us. The same Ukraine that has suspended elections, the same Ukraine that has seized control of all media, the same Ukraine. Insane in the Ukraine. Sorry, low-hanging fruit. The same Ukraine that has now suspended elections. When they say that they are defending democracy, I want you to hear what they're really saying. Because they're serious. They are defending democracy. And if you want to look at the kind of democracy they have in mind for defending, look no further than Ukraine. It is a so-called democracy where they are in charge, you are not, shut up. And you know what? Sometimes very bad things, because democracy, look at the etymology of that word. Etymology is my college word. I got like 3 of those. Look at the etymology of the word democracy, from the Greek meaning mob rule. Benjamin Franklin said that democracy is 2 wolves and a sheep voting over what's for dinner. I hold that a well-armed sheep could contest the vote, and we may see that here in the United States, but democracy is mob rule. Bad things happen. Democracies inevitably descend into tyranny. That's why we've got to fight for the republic. Ukraine, we made them a democracy with all its attendant corruption. First it was Poroshenko, right? Eventually we wind up with this ass clown cokehead, Zelensky, allegedly a Jew, running a government made up of right sector neo-Nazis and folding the Azov battalion and the Tornado battalions, neo-Nazi battalions, back into the regular Ukrainian military with the inevitable atrocities against civilians. Do you know that the average age of the combat soldier on the front lines in Ukraine now is over 40? Did you know that? This is going to affect Ukraine for generations. They have already burned through all the young cannon fodder that they had. They are conscripting men off the streets while the regime continues to tell us that we're winning because we're defending democracy. This is exactly the kind of democracy they're talking about. A democracy where shut up, we're in charge, and you're not. This is exactly what they mean when they say democracy. It is classic doublethink. Power to hold 2 contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them. We are defending democracy, which is why we have to seize all the media and censor your communications. We are defending democracy, which is the reason why we have to arrest religious figures and shut down churches. We are defending democracy, which is why we have to suspend elections. You guys tracking? So when they say we are defending democracy in Ukraine, that is exactly the kind of democracy that they're talking about defending. But I got some good news for you, people. I got some good news for you. Garrett, you were talking about those affirmations. I got some more affirmations for you. Yes, sir. Yes, we are. How many will say it can never happen here? There will be some, George. a disturbingly large number, but I think we've hit the tipping point. And let me close with that, with some good news. You know who's pushing back? Churches. You know who's pushing back? The popular culture. Do you realize how many high profile celebrities that if I would have told you 5 years ago were ever going to convert to Christianity have gotten publicly baptized and converted to Christianity or Catholicism? Right? Thank you. He does have a say in that. And I thank God for him too. Thank God for him. Spasibo. But Russell Brand, dude. Yeah, Russell Brand. Oh, Bart, I thought you hated pretty motherfuckers. Yeah, I do. And I used to find him an insufferable douchebag. On a lot of levels, I still do. I don't think I would want to hang out with him on a regular basis, assuming he ever knew that I existed. I don't think we'd be pals. I think I'd probably start getting a little irritated after about the second or third time we hung out. Maybe not, though. Maybe the changes really run that deep. Russell Brand got baptized this week. Russell Brand got baptized this week. Jordan Peterson's wife took communion on Easter Sunday at the Catholic Church that she's a part of. Jordan is a man of faith and a man of God. I believe that. He's still waffling, but he is a man of faith and he is a man of spirit and he is a man of morals. And as far as I'm concerned, he is a man of God. And he will be the next one to go quite public with it. Kat Von D, for the love of Christ, literally practicing Satanist. Do you know the value of her collection of occult books? She had like first edition Aleister Crowley's. Got rid of all of them. And she's in the process of having nearly her entire body blacked out with tattoo ink to cover satanic symbolism because she came to Christ. Alice Cooper. That was a while back, but still. You know who? And I'm going to throw this out. And maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I will be proven stupid going forward. But I'm going to throw this out. I'm going to throw it out there anyway. So you can see you heard it here first. You know the next guy that's going to make that move? The next really big, unexpected one that's going to make that move? Rogan. You heard it here first. Rogan. So many people getting red-pilled, man. So for all the stuff that we are up against and for all that is at stake, rolling forward, for all that is at stake, thank you, Dennis. I know. You knew what was coming. For all that is at stake coming forward. For that fight we got coming, and it is a fight, and we are already in it. Spoiler alert, folks. For my secular people, you can tune me out. For people of faith, I read the book, we win. But that's the thing, I read the book, and it's got to get really, really ugly before we win. Some of y'all ain't ready for that. I am. I'm ready. Not looking forward to it. Especially old, fat, and crippled. I'm not looking forward to it, but I'm ready. I'm ready because that's what he's called me to do. But I am seeing that awakening. I wasn't kidding in the opener, and I was not exaggerating. I was not exaggerating in that before we got to all that man versus bear madness. There is a revival happening right now, people. There is an awakening culturally happening. And I can't tell you what to believe. If you do not share that faith, I can't tell you what to believe, but I can tell you what I believe. I believe that God is calling his children home. I believe that God is calling his children home. And I believe that God is putting together his army. There's a reason why these people keep getting called, because they have reach that we do not. I think the most viewers I've ever had on for a Sunday sermon was 1,200. 1,200. What kind of reach do you think Russell Brand has? I mean, that was cool that the carpenter still looked at me and went, you got a gift. I can use you. I can put you to work. Stop aggrandizing yourself and do this for me for what I've done to you. And I feel so blessed that he gave me that calling. But it can't be just people like me, man. Can't be just people like me. I'm going to get there because I'm going to keep speaking the truth. I'm going to get there because I'm going to keep spreading the word. And I don't care if I never have more than I don't care if I never have more than 20 people watching this damn sermon at one time. I'm gonna keep spitting the truth. So I'm gonna do my part for the fight. And if I'm called to do greater things, then I'm called to do greater things. That is the calling. But we need people who are already high profile, and we can't reject them. And George, I heard what you were saying. George, I heard what you were saying earlier about he was, messing with the tarot cards and things like that. He's gonna slip. I get your grievance on that, George. I really do. I really do. Especially when he's got that kind of reach. When he slips, it reflects to a bigger crowd and might shake a few people off the fence, more people than I would off the fence the right way, right? Like if you caught me tomorrow coming out of a porn shack, it's it's going to shake people, but it's not going to lead 20,000 people the wrong way. When you got an audience like he does, he can't afford to be playing with tarot cards. I get it. But you know what? I believe in the divine plan. I do. I believe there's a reason this awakening is happening. I believe there's a reason for this revival. I believe, right? Exactly. He's going to slip. Yes, exactly. He's going to slip. He's going to slip. We're all going to slip. Yes. And that of course, and those are the two important factors. We can't, here's the irony of it. We are in a position where ideological Puritanism is not something that we could afford. Was it John Bennett? I think it was John Bennett. John Bennett, who was our guest pastor last week, came in from Oklahoma at On Fire Ministries. On Fire Ministries, by the way, with Matt Shea. That's my home church, if you want to look that up. The guest pastor that we had last week was John Bennett, and man, he came up from Oklahoma and he brought the fire and brimstone, and they talked about that even with Trump, because he was one of the people that Cruz and some of the other people were consulting with, right? And they said, well, Trump isn't a very godly man. Love you, Ryan. Thank you. He said Trump isn't a very godly man. Yeah, well, you're missing the point, Sparky, because Saul wasn't a very godly man at one point, since Ryan brought that up. Saul tortured and murdered Christians, right? God still had a place in the plan. I'm a firm believer in the plan. I might not even believe in the person from time to time. Because there are some calls that Boss Man makes that I'm like, really? But the one thing that I've learned to do is just shut my fat freaking mouth and trust the plan. Because I know he's done greater things with more flawed individuals. And George, I know you understand that. I hope you didn't take that I was coming down on you, man. I was addressing that because on that thread, we had spoken about it. He does need to watch himself. He's going to stumble because he's got a big audience. You think? Maybe. I don't want to get too much on that though, Sonny, because that puts me in that puts me where I'm in danger for that pride creeping up. But like Doug said to me back when we had a very important conversation, I've got an ability to reach people that otherwise might not be reachable because of the things that I've been through. And George, in the same way, and I know you don't take it personally, bro. I wanted to make sure we were still clear and we were still communicating. In the same way that I'm going to be able to reach people who wouldn't be reached by a regular mainstream preacher, people who are high mileage and damaged goods that I'm going to be able to reach that other people wouldn't, right? There are a whole generation of young men and a lot of young women, because let's face it, by cultural standards, by cultural standards, Russell is still, he's a very pretty man. Very pretty man. In the same way that a lot of women found him funny as a comedian, when I really don't think he was all that funny, that whole swooning over Russell because he's so dreamy, it might get him there by the wrong roundabout way. Who am I to say wrong? But if just one of those women who thinks he's just the dreamiest opens up a Bible, I'm going to call it a win. We need everybody, man. We need everybody. All hands on deck. All hands on deck. Like the carpenter told me when he brought it home. Like the carpenter told me when he brought me home. He was like, man, we have got a title fight coming up and I need all hands on deck. When he said all hands on deck, man, a lot of the times I look at the hands that he brings up and I'm like, really? You know, I got my doubts, but I trust the plan. I trust the plan because I trust the boss man. I trust the carpenter. So, for all that's going on, for all the obvious signs that we do have that fight coming up and it's going to be sooner than later, for all the twisted deceptions that are going on, for all the double think, for these whiny little maggots on these college campuses that are literally bowing to a Muslim call to prayer. I'm not even making that up. Queers for Palestine, not even making that up. Bowing for the Muslim call to prayer, bowing down for a religion that beheads them as a matter of state policy in Muslim countries. And we think we're lost. Southern evangelicals defending a secular nation and a race of people who say that our Savior is burning alive in excrement for all eternity as a false prophet, accuse him in the Sanhedrins and in the Talmud of being a sorcerer and a warlock. We're lost. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's getting ugly, and I think it's going to have to get ugly. And I think we're seeing the earliest, barely dipping our toes in the pond of that ugly. I think you're going to see a hell of a lot worse. And if you ain't down for the fight, get your ass off to the side. But like I said about a month ago now, sermon that I did, we got room for you too. Just because you can't be out there fighting doesn't mean you can't be loading magazines. Just because you can't be loading magazines doesn't mean you can't be carrying cases of ammunition. Just because you can't be carrying cases of ammunition or loading magazines or fighting on the front line doesn't mean that you have a low profile and you can't sneak communications behind enemy lines. All hands on deck means all hands on deck. There is room for you in that divine plan. I don't care who you are. I don't care what function you previously served. There is room for you in that divine plan if you only believe it. And I'm going to tell you something. There's at least one of y'all out there right now. At least one of y'all out there. It's right on the edge. Right on the edge. You're where I was, brother. You're where I was, sister. You've been hearing for a long time, but you ain't listening. And he's speaking to you right now. And you're right on that edge. If you only had the courage to believe it, if you only had the humility to give it up. I say, you know what? Boss man, I ain't got the answers. I ain't got the answers. And you know what? Maybe you don't even understand the full width and breadth of what's going on, but you know something is wrong. If there's anyone walking around in the modern day United States that doesn't have that innate gut sense, whether they have the balls and the spine to express it or not, but doesn't feel in their guts that something is wrong, they are lost. There are plenty on the left who will never admit it for a million years because it's always party over principle and they have no moral compass, no religion, but they feel it in their guts. And when you bring it up in front of them, you can see the entire expression of their face change. Whole character of their face changes. Pensive. I've been called, it's like a liar that's been called out in a lie. It's like a kid that you know stole the cookie out of the jar and you call him on it. And maybe he's a sniveling little kid. Maybe he's a good liar, but you see it in his face. You know he did it. Same thing with these people. Man, there's something wrong. These policies are throwing everything's going to hell in a handbasket behind these policies that you support, and you call them and something is wrong. Maybe just a simple base thing. Something is wrong in this country. And you see it in their face because they know too. You got to have the courage to believe it, man. And you got to have the courage that going into this fight, that there is a plan that is greater than yours, and a strength that is greater than yours, and a spirit that is greater than yours, and a power that is greater than yours. One that will gift you with a peace that you can't even imagine going into these trying times. And I will not tell you that it's going to be easy, because it's not. And I will not tell you that you're not going to lose friends, because you are. And I will not tell you that you're not going to have to cut people out of your life, because you will. And I won't tell you that there aren't things that you hold pretty precious that you're going to have to give up, because you will. The trade-off is, when you give those things up, you will see what damage they were doing to you, and you will understand the greatness of that plan that is greater than yours. You think you have it together. You do not. You do not. I pray that you give it over to the carpenter. I pray that you give it over to the boss man. Put down your burden and pick up your cross. I will say that every damn week until it sinks in. Put down your burden and pick up your cross. That burden is something that's like a bag of bricks, and you've been carrying it for somebody else. You've either been carrying it for somebody else, or somebody else draped that sumbitch across your shoulder. Put it down. Oh, good. I don't have to carry the bricks. But I got a cross over here for you to carry. That is a burden that is going to be your purpose. That division of labor. Some of us are out here to speak the word. Some of us are out here to deliver the aid. Some of us are out here to heal the sick. Some of us are out here to cast out demons even. It's that division of responsibilities, because when the fight comes, it's going to be a division of responsibilities. Maybe your cross to bear is carrying the ammo to the front lines. Maybe your cross to bear is the same then as it is now, which is to minister to the people that can still be reached. I pray that it's there for you, man. I really do. I pray that it's there for you. But I can promise you that there will be a peace like you've never known in your life. Because for all the stuff that's going on, a lot of you, the biggest problem that you're having is that you can't see any purpose in it. You can't see any purpose to the whole game, let alone your position on the playing field. The peace comes with knowing your place in the game. All you got to give up is stupid pride that's doing nothing but kill you anyway. I hope that y'all come to the right conclusion. Tick tock, tick tock. When time's up, it's over. Wish you all the blessings in the world. We all get there when we get there, except for the ones that don't. And for those that actively refuse, and for those that would violently oppose, knuckles up. I'll see you across the barricades, son. It's going to be a bad day for you. Good news is it's going to be a short one. We'll close with a prayer real quick. Lord God, I thank you for every listening ear and every open eye. I thank you for every eye that you pulled the scales off of, like you did Saul of Tarsus on his road to Damascus. I thank you for having the grace to bring my knucklehead ass back to the fold. I could lament all the time that I wasted, but I'd rather spend time thanking you for the gift that you've given me and for reaching the people that can still be reached as we wind down. Help these people to understand when I'm being hyperbolic and when I'm not. I try to be clear, Lord, but sometimes I don't have that clarity. Help me to use this gift that you've given me. Help the people out there that might be searching right now to have the courage to take that step, to lay down that burden and pick up that cross. For the people out there who are hurting, Lord, people out there who are hurting, maybe hurting because of bad decisions that they've made, hurting because of circumstances forced upon them that they have no control over. I ask if their burden can be lifted to lift it, but if it is their part in the divine plan that they suffer, that they be able to bear through this adversity and take the lessons from it that they can and not make the same mistake again. I keep hearing, forget the mistake, remember the lesson, forget the mistake, remember the lesson, and I cannot stress the importance of that enough, Lord. Don't let me ever completely lose sight of the things that have gone before, the bad things, the mistakes that I've made. Don't ever let me completely lose sight of that, because the lessons that they've taught me have to be remembered or else I'll slide right back in. I'm a flawed man, Lord, but you have found a purpose for me. I ask that you help all these people out there who might be searching to accept the fact that there is a place for them in that divine plan, and the courage to take that step to give it over to you, Lord. And I pray that you steel our spines for the fight, and that on that day, give us the strength that the last word that leaves our lips is Jesus. That we go out boldly witnessing for Christ with our very last breath. I pray these things in the name of the risen Christ whom I ever serve. Amen. Whew. I love y'all, man. I love y'all. I've been very blessed. I'm close with this right now. I got another crane gig. It's looking like next Sunday's sermon is going to be delivered from a little place in the middle of the Nevada desert. Can't even discuss it with you right now. I'll have some more details for you next week once I get settled in. But I'm on my way to Nevada, and I'm going to be down there for a month running a crane on a project. And it's been a blessing. In the course of the last week, with the injury and everything that's kept me sidetracked and sidelined, God had a plan. And part of that plan was to bring me to meet the general so I could find my church, so I could attend that conference, so I could meet those people, so I could attend services. And On Fire Ministries, if you guys want to look that up, Pastor Matt Shea and On Fire Ministries, I finally found a home church. I went to men's ministry on Thursday, and I went to services this morning. And you want to talk about mysterious ways? I'm going to share this with you real quick before I get out of here. One of my girls who I used to work with at the club, she was one of my favorite girls when I was still in the biz, and I worked with her out at State Line. And she is now involved she came to Christ way before I did. She came to Christ, and she is now there, and she is working in the women's ministry and in the street ministry for On Fire. And I think it's amazing. We saw each other today, and we had a big hug, and both were like, mysterious ways, huh? Yeah, mysterious ways. God's got a plan, bro. God's got a plan. I believe that. And I never would have thought I would. But I believe in it. I trust in it. and I just try to find my place in it. And I hope that all of you are similarly blessed. I'm going to pass around that little digital collection plate like I always do here at the end of the sermon. I am on PayPal. I'm on Cash App. I'm on Venmo. I'm on Facebook Pay. I'm on all that good stuff. If you guys want to look up. Going to go out with a little bit of Clutch. Fortunate Son. Best cover of that song ever, by the way. Yeah, man, if you guys want to throw a little coin, I mean, it's largely a labor of love, but whatever you can kick down, kick down. And I understand we're also in a Biden economy, reluctantly, for a little while longer. And that's kind of a drag. So some of you maybe can't kick down, but here's what you can do for me. If you got your own social media presence, you can share. Tell some people about the program. Say, hey, man, we got a fat, toothless cripple, crane operator with some opinions. He likes to get on rant rave for a couple hours every Sunday. Maybe he'll dig it. Turn him on to the program, man. All of my Reverends Rangers, my Sinner Sisters, my Prophets of Doom out there, pass that word along. But here's what you can do, not just for me, but for yourself. Like the Mighty Mighty Stone says, live the three. Live the three. What is live the three? It's the three prime directives. You got to be that signal in a world full of noise. They will try to bury you in the noise. You got to have the signal to punch through that noise, to deliver the wisdom, to deliver the truth in a world full of lies. You got to be that light in a world full of darkness. They will try to bury you with the darkness, demoralize you, dehumanize you, emasculate you, make you think there is nothing left but the darkness. You got to be that light that not only carries through the darkness, but punches through the darkness, which leads me to the iron rule, the prime directive. You've got to be that strength in a world full of weakness. And I'm not just talking here, I'm talking here, and sometimes even here, because without that strength, none of the other directives matter. Without that strength, you will not have the punch to get that signal through the noise. Without strength, you will not have the tenacity, the resolve, power to carry that light through the darkness. Strength above all, man. Strength, clarity, discernment. Always pray for those things. Strength, clarity, and discernment above all. Live the three, people. God bless y'all, man. God bless y'all for being here. I love y'all, man. Thank you so much for making me feel less like a lone voice in the wilderness, man. But even if I was, I'd still be spitting the truth. God bless each and every one of you. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Eyes on the prize. Boss man got the plan. Carpenter's got your back. Remember that. I love y'all. God bless you. See you next Sunday. Peace. I am blessed. I am blessed. I am blessed.